Leith Martin, welcome to my living room.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
How are things in Las Vegas?
Things have started to open back up. There's obviously rules that are in place that are really different than it was before. There are certain things that aren't open. Most of the buffets aren't open, but a lot of the restaurants are now open. There's obviously social distancing on the casino floor, which is different. Number of people that can sit at the table, number of slot machines that are open, those kind of things. But I will have to say that it has picked up relatively quickly. I mean, it's really busy. I was in the area. I was on the Strip. What day was that? Saturday afternoon. And I was just going to ride by the Bellagio because I was curious as if they had put in a new exhibit. So I was going to ride by. And when I pulled up into the driveway, they actually said that the parking deck was close to capacity. And so I was surprised by that because I've lived here 10 years and there aren't many times that I've been by that the parking deck was close to capacity. So I guess my point is that while all these rules are in place, a lot of people seem to be out.
Are there shows and pool parties and everything else going on that Vegas is so famous for?
Definitely not shows, because there hasn't really been a way, I think, that people have been able to figure out how to manage, 6, 7, 8, 10,000 people in a single space. So those are not open. Some of the pools are open from my understanding, but I think they're obviously quite a bit different than they were for pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, I don't think any of the nightclubs have opened back up. I haven't seen anything about that as well. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the update on Vegas because,
Sure.
it's so hot out there right now. So I was just like dying to talk to you, even just, I mean, there's so many reasons that we'll get into, but, wearing a mask in that very dry Vegas, Nevada heat, I know is probably tough for a lot of people, but I'm happy that people are making that sacrifice to have a little fun finally.
Yeah, that's true. Initially there was I guess incentives to try to get people to wear masks. So for example, I think even some of the casinos were offering free play if you were wearing a mask. But recently the governor put in a mandate that, look, you have to wear a mask if you're going to be in those public spaces. And so as I mentioned, I was in the general area on Saturday, and almost everyone had a mask. I didn't see hardly anyone with it, unless there were a few people outside. Other than that, everyone had a mask. So.
Yeah. Well, I know that you really take to heart how the hospitality industry has been so affected by what's going on with the pandemic, which is why you created this program, this initiative through your university. Tell us all about it.
Sure. So the Leith Family Foundation, Ted and Doris Leith family have been long supporters of the community as well as the Lee Business School, which is the business school at UNLV. And they approached us about the possibility of trying to figure out how to create a competition that would allow hospitality, travel, and entertainment to return to some level of normalcy as quickly as possible. Obviously, our community is incredibly dependent on those industries. But as a nation, I mean, in a nation where GDP is approximately $20 trillion, hospitality, entertainment, travel account for over 3 trillion of that. So between $3 and $4 trillion a year. So approaching a fifth of the total economy is based on those three industries, which, given the loss of revenue and the devastation in those industries, it's important that we get it to return as quickly as possible. So we developed the Lee Prize, the Lee School Prize, which in essence is we have $1 million that we're going to give away to teams that are working on projects in travel, hospitality, entertainment, that allow us to recover as quickly as possible from the pandemic. The idea is that we want to support the ones that are closest to market, meaning that if you can bring a product or service to market in the next 12 months, then you fit our criteria for the possibility of winning some money. So, and then we're going to have a demo day as part of this. So we'll put the winners in front of groups of investors, customers, that will allow them hopefully to get some traction and some additional capital.
And you have some pretty big names that are tied to this, whether, I guess, as investors or as judges.
Yeah, so, Las Vegas is, it's a really interesting place. It's very different than most people envision it to be, if I'm being honest. I've lived here for over 10 years, and most people don't really know a lot about the local community because they obviously spend most of their time in a 5 or 6 mile strip on the Strip. But it's a city it's a community that's pretty cohesive when it comes to trying to help the community recover. And so we reached out to leaders in those industries, because the idea is that we wanted people as judges who had a really good understanding of the difficulties that they're currently facing to determine who the best opportunities are or the best winners might be. So we had, Mark Davis of the Raiders obviously was willing, Wolfgang Puck, Bill Foley, who owns the Vegas Golden Knights, Steve Aoki. We've had some great people step up, and even people that are involved in the gaming commission at the state level. It's been a really positive experience in terms of people's willingness to jump in and help out.
Yeah. Oh, you mentioned the Raiders. How's that stadium looking?
It's pretty impressive. I have to admit, and it's really close. It was pretty aggressive in terms of a schedule. We weren't really sure if they could get it done in time, but they have. I mean, it looks like they're going to be ready to go. I don't know how many people will be in it when it starts up, but it definitely is a phenomenal facility.
Yeah, that's going to be exciting to have the NFL in Vegas. I mean, I'm a diehard football fan, so that's going to be really cool. So you've already started looking at some of the entries. Anything really jump out at you? Wow, I can't believe somebody thought of this idea. It's genius.
Well, we have looked at some of them. We've tried to not go too deep into it till the submissions close. So just for reference, the submissions close on July the 5th, which is just under a week away. The website is leadprize.com. So if you want to go and send in an application. But there have been some pretty interesting things that I've looked at when I've gone, or seen when I've gone through there. Things like, different ways to clean the air. There are some fairly significant technologies out there that will allow us to filter air in a way that would actually remove a lot of the virus material that's in the air. There's also there's some sensors or detectors that will allow you to detect some level of viruses in the air, and then all kinds of things associated with maybe ways to clean poker chips, ways to clean cards, other things that more specifically tied specifically to gaming, I guess. But then there's lots of companies that have been working on technologies that maybe they couldn't get traction. So maybe more contactless food delivery mechanisms, or maybe ways to interact with customers inside the restaurant environment that limit the number of contact between servers and patrons. So maybe when you pay and do other things, that maybe it reduces the amount of contact. So that might change the restaurant experience, but it might allow them to be at more capacity as opposed to just being at, say, 40 or 50% capacity.
Well, you are heading up the entrepreneurship school at the university. So this must make you very excited to see entrepreneurship at such a high level.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, listen, I think entrepreneurs are incredibly important, not only to recovery, but our economy in general, because they solve problems in a way that doesn't require intervention from other agencies, governments, or others. They just see a problem and they go solve the problem, and then they create solutions to those problems. And I think when we're in a market as disruptive as this one, innovation is our way out. It's pretty difficult to manage the scale and scope of what's going on without solutions that will be in place that can be put in place that allow us to recover. And then also, I think the reality is when infrastructure or disruption takes place, that's when innovation flourishes, because sometimes when systems are in place that make it difficult for innovation to take place, because maybe we've done it this way for a long time, or maybe it's more difficult to change because momentum is what it is. When you have disruption, then change is much more acceptable and easier to pull off. And so I think entrepreneurs see disruption very differently than most other people, because they see opportunity. They actually don't see despair. They see opportunity.
That is exactly, that's what's gotten me through this whole time. I'm looking at the positives and the opportunities that this is now going to present. And I think even if you don't have that entrepreneur spirit, you kind of had to have that to sustain being in lockdown for so long, right? You had to come up with creative ways to fill your days, to do homeschooling if you're a parent. So everybody's gotten a little taste of what it's like.
And you're exactly right. And then also, I think that this is about long-term mitigation, meaning that, we don't really know how long we're going to be in the situation with the coronavirus, but the reality in a global economy is that these things are going to be, I wouldn't say common, but they're not going to be uncommon. And so how are we going to manage global viruses in the future in a way that we hopefully mitigate the destruction? I mean, we had talked for a couple decades about the possibility of something like this happening. But the reality is that, obviously we were not prepared. And what are we going to have to do in the future so that we can manage these type of things in such a way that we don't go in the travel industry, we don't go from 100% revenue to 10% revenue. I mean,
Yeah.
those are impossible to manage. And so what do we have to do in order to be able to make those industries a little more resilient to these type things in the future?
Yeah. So are you coming back to school in the fall in person?
So here's what we did on our campus is the largest classes were moved to online. So if a class had more than 75 students, we moved it online for two reasons. One is because obviously the numbers, but two, it's pretty difficult to manage 120, 130 students in any classroom size or any classroom where you can manage social distancing. So you had to have a really large facility. So what we did is we moved all of our classes over 75 students online, which accounted for about 50% of our classes. But because they were the largest classes, that means that at any given time, we'll probably only end up with 40, 45% of our students actually on campus. So for example, you might be taking a couple classes that are really large, so they'll be online, and you're taking some smaller classes that might be on campus. But at any one time, we'll probably only have 40% of our students actually on campus at one time.
Wow. And what about dorming?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't even know what housing is announced yet. I don't know if they're going to try to do every other room or if they're going to do something different. I don't know how they're managing that.
Wow. We are in wild times. That's all I can say. There's so many things to think about across every single industry.
It is.
Yeah.
It's disruptive everywhere. It doesn't matter your industry.
It is. Well, Leith, this was so much fun. Thank you so much. Give the website one more time because we want to get this interview out before submissions close.
Sure. So it's leeprize.com. There's information about the applications, there's information about the judges. All the information is there. July the 5th is the deadline. I think it's midnight Pacific time. So if you're on the East Coast, you get a few extra hours. But we encourage you to submit. Great.
Leith, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to seeing the winners.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate your time.
Yes, you too. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.